today I'm going to probably most likely take you through some of my experiences. I'm going to walk you through my process of finding creativity and engineering in one big bowl of salad. I was born and raised in a country where the value of math and sciences and technology way more supersede the value of art and expression. I was one of those people who felt like my voice was never heard as much as I wanted to because it was not appreciated. It was always two different worlds of sciences and art. I felt a misfit, but I also felt that my true happiness was not going to be until I actually do what I love doing. I still remember the day one of my art instructors, I thought I could just change it from my head. Didn't you see it? I still remember the day I was signed up for an art competition in my first grade. My art instructor was very motivating. She encouraged me to take part in this competition. It was kind of a big deal. Over 100 students were taking part in this competition. I felt that this was my moment to express myself and show the world that I have a brain, I have a mind, and that does not just have to do with the sciences and the technology. I went ahead, took that opportunity. It was a big moment for me also because my parents were looking forward to some way of my expression. I can remember that day when I was sitting in that competition room surrounded by a bunch of students who were all there for one same purpose, to express themselves in a blank canvas. How beautiful is that energy? How beautiful is that power to magically transfer your brain, your creativity into that emptiness? How many of us actually experience that every day and do not necessarily have to have a canvas in front of them to express that? I'll share some more examples as I move forward. But this was my moment. This was my world. And I felt that in that room, I enjoyed that energy, that creative energy that I felt could move the mountains, could move the world. And I knew at that very instant that I had to help people understand and value their own creativity. As I finished painting, that was, again, I still remember, was the most beautiful moment. As I finished painting, I was so proud of myself. I looked around, amazing art, amazing pieces. It was just mind-blowing what that piece of nothingness became this masterpiece, each one of them. It wasn't until later that day I got a call from my instructor telling my parents that, guess what, your daughter won the first prize. I was in another world. For me, it was not just about winning. It was the fact that I was appreciated and rewarded for something that was so important to me. Basically, I can say I was being rewarded for being myself. How easy is that? For myself, it was very fortunate. I took, again, pride, but that was the moment of great achievement for me. It was after a few years later that I kind of found out on one day that the trophy that I had won from that competition was thrown away. For some, it might have been, okay, get over it, move on. But for me, it was another shake to my perspective on how I was defining my happiness at the moment. I was lost again, and it was that instant I felt like that creative spark that I had in me, that confidence, it was gone. It was dead. It was not the trophy that was gone. It was my confidence that I had lost. Unfortunately, that's the matter of the fact. This is how we affiliate our successes to different objects. I shut myself down that day. I felt like I was not going to do any more of my expression. But guess what? I kept getting pulled into competitions. I kept taking part in art competitions, and surprisingly enough, with no motivation, I was still winning. I was still getting all those prizes, and most of them in the first position. It was very encouraging, but I still felt like I was not doing what I felt like would really give me the true power. Maybe I was not strong enough at the moment, or maybe I did not focus too much on what that happiness was. Either ways, I moved on, and I started looking for happiness around me, finding creativity in other things because I thought that I did not have enough. Well, being an artist in that country wasn't enough. I happened to be a woman as well. And being a woman is beautiful, but not in my country, not completely. There were a lot of struggles growing up. I was always told by my surrounding, by the society, that a woman's place is at home. A woman can do this, a woman can do that, but a woman cannot be in front of a man, cannot be better than a man. I took that as a challenge, per se. And more than anything else, I saw my mom make that change in me. She would teach me every time I would get stuck in something. She would tell me, Wafa, I want you to be that water that flows around the rocks when it finds a rock and gets a barrier. And if it doesn't flow around it, it will pierce through that hard surface. No matter how difficult the situation is and no matter how much resistance you get, just keep flowing and you will find your way. Well, guess what? That was easy. Being water, just flowing through the situation. Let's do it, right? Let's keep going. But guess what? It was so hard. There was so much energy required while going through that process. While I was going through that process of going around those rocks my entire life, I felt like I was losing a part of myself as well. But I kept going, thanks to my family. To cut things short, today I am a model-based systems engineer in cybersecurity. I have come a long way from not knowing that part of the world to actually understanding how that part of the world works. I deal with multiple engineers, multiple areas of engineering in technical, non-technical, in management, and I've had a good amount of exposure to different things. And I thoroughly enjoy it, and I want to share with you the way how I ended up enjoying my experience as an engineer. I've worked with hackers, with penetration testers, or I should say security analysts in different areas, picking on their brains all the time. What is it that makes you special? What is it that you do that you enjoy? Why can't I do something that would make me happy as well? And then, finally, Rumi whispered to me in my ear one time when I read through this quote, "Let the beauty of what you love be what you do." I had to apply that to my life now. Beauty of what you love be what you do. I can't do that. I have to make a living. I have to make people happy. I have to be a strong, independent woman in a corporate world. How am I going to do that? Be happy, the beauty? That doesn't just make sense. Rumi was another world. So, while I was still in that process of finding that beauty and understanding what would make me happy and what is it that I loved, I came across this engineering director in my company, well-known, well-recognized, a wonderful person. And this was my chance to talk to him and ask him, hey, so I see that you're very successful, you're recognized, and this is the image that I feel like would define my success as well. So how about we talk? Could you mentor me, probably? He was more than happy. We had our first meeting. We talked about things and how to develop our goals and everything. And I started feeling like this was, again, one of those things where I could just read through and understand. And then the most dreaded question came up. He asked me, "So, Wafa, let's begin our mentoring process. My first question to you, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Has anyone heard that question before? Well, yes. And I ask you to ask that question to yourself every day. But guess what? When I was asked that question, I was blank. I had just Googled before coming to him the things to keep in mind before going to a mentor and how to address those questions. And I had a list of, I see myself doing this, I see myself being a program manager, running a $6 million program, and managing the finances and being an expert on I don't know, radar-based technology. Yeah, I had figured all that out. But for that instant, I felt lost. And it was on my face, and I told him, and that was my moment to decide whether I lie to him or just be honest and pour myself out. But I did. I couldn't lie, and I told him the truth. I see myself sitting in this huge art warehouse. That's my studio. Right in front of me is my easel. Around me is my paints. On the walls, I see my artwork, my paintings, and then all the paint splattered around me. These huge ceilings, they're all covered in my art. And this is me enjoying my art. That was my world. And as I kept saying how much I was enjoying telling him about my dream, I felt like, I think this is the moment where I should start packing up my thoughts and start heading out of the office, because most likely he thinks that I was in the wrong place and I was pursuing wrong goals, and I would never be an engineer for sure. And it wasn't until that moment when he responded that changed my world. He said to me, "Nothing should change, Wafa. Your art is who you are. Bring that to work. Make that your discriminator. The way you deal with situations, interact with people, solve problems, design infrastructures, and do bigger things as an engineer is what you should bring to your work. Something as little as the way you dress up is what you're going to bring to your work as well. That's you." And guess what? Since then, every time I sit around engineers, be it hundreds of engineers or 20 or 5, I dress up as myself, the way I feel I can express myself. I don't necessarily follow a specific code, but I'm respected for how I walk into the room with my own self. I felt that day when I walked out of his office, I was myself, and I never changed. I felt like I had found that creative spark, that confidence that I had lost a couple of years ago, that I could not find. I was so happy once again. Now I had to plan everything again. I had to figure out how I'm going to bring my creativity to work. Manifestation of this appeared while I was reading Arianna Huffington's biography on Pablo Picasso, one of my favorites. He said, according to Picasso, it's not what an artist does that counts, but what he is, which really made me understand how beautiful his art was, because he never differentiated the two. Since then, I decided to bring art to my work. My projects became my canvas. Everything about technology or anything to do with engineering became my canvas, and I had to just walk in with my creative toolkit to make that difference. And that's what I thought was going to make that difference. I have worked with a bunch of penetration testers. We go down to different systems and have to break into those systems to see how secure they are and make sure that we can find flaws in those systems. If you're not familiar with that, you'd realize it's a very, very exciting field, because all you really have to do is use your brain to do things and see things that not everyone can see. We had to scrape off the layers of the unseen. We had to understand what were the things that not everyone could see so we could bring in that change. Well, before any hacker or threats could detect it, we had to figure out a solution. That was the part of creativity I enjoyed. It was very challenging. And it was the most important thing during this process was the idea of thinking outside the box, because that was what made it very different. And that is where the creativity and the work actually happened for me. Well, like Albert Einstein said, after a certain high level of technical skill is achieved, science and art tend to coalesce in aesthetics, plasticity, and form. The greatest scientists are always artists as well. How many of you are familiar with the Shinkansen train? Well, just to give an overview, this is a train system in Japan where they were having an initial issue when the train was launched, and the issue with it was that it was very loud and it was having disturbance in the community. The engineers were trying to figure out the solution to the problem, and the basic idea was that it was the round shape of the train that prevented it from being very subtle. So they brought in this engineer, a design engineer, who also happened to be a bird watcher. Well, who would have thought a bird watcher would help solve one of the greatest problems of its time? What he did was, by observing different movements and different forms of creativity and in nature, he brought that into his work and his design process. He used the body of a penguin and the wings of an owl, and the most beautiful part, the beak of a kingfisher, to completely redesign this train, which changed everything. This train was as fast as about 200 miles per hour, carrying about 68 million people a day, was a complete new revolution. It was basically what? A creative spark from an artist or an observer who had seen something in the nature and brought it to an object to make it different, to make it in a way that if we were to follow a simple, clear path, would probably have not solved it until we really looked beyond the obvious. So that's where I figured out my life, and I decided to say that I like to engine art, or I'm thoroughly involved in engine arting, which is where I feel the notion of form and aesthetics and beauty is married to the logic and structure, where when they both are combined together, give you a completely different approach to the world. Historically speaking, the world in the past have nothing been different. Only I felt like when I've been involved in understanding the art, I felt like they were appreciated for being artists more than being just engineers. Their creativity was demonstrated through different forms, and it was also provided in the function of their masterpieces. One of those very significant artists is Da Vinci, as you know. He was not just an engineer, he was not just an artist, he was a perfect blend of both. He introduced very, very strong mathematical notions to explain to us how our world around is not just limited to form, but also function, and vice versa. He showed us different perspectives on how to perceive things and solve problems. This is what I define creativity, not just limiting ourselves to what is given to us, but also finding the true meaning inside it, scraping off that layer to see that creativity is not just about confining to the rules, it's about understanding those rules and making things better as well. So I'll basically close off my heartfelt conversation with you with the few takeaways that I want for you to understand. Moving forward in life, And as you are in life as well, you'll come across a lot of pressures, a lot of things that will make you want to change the way you see things or do things. And you know what that will do? That will eventually kill the inside of you. You'll realize that you would want to be someone or want to please someone, but while doing it, you'll be losing your own self as well. Don't let that happen. You're only going to go negative. You're only going to be difficult on your own self. Be the person who accepts you, who you are. Prove that to the world, because that is the creativity that the world will see, and it will outshine you no matter what it is. That's it from me. Thank you very much.